My name is Cassie Holt. I'm 28 years old, and 8 months ago I was driving 40 minutes each way to a warehouse job in Sparks, Nevada, clocking in at 5 in the morning, loading distribution pallets until my shoulders locked up, then driving home to a one-bedroom apartment where the heat worked maybe 60% of the time, and my husband had already left for whatever it was he did during the day. I didn't know what that was exactly. He said consulting. I stopped asking follow-up questions somewhere around month 4 of our marriage because the answers always made me feel stupid for asking. I'm getting ahead of myself. I grew up in Reno, raised almost entirely by my grandmother, Ruth Ellison, after my mom left when I was 9, and my dad made it clear fairly quickly that single parenting was not something he planned for. My grandmother was not a woman who talked about money. She drove a Buick she'd owned since 2003. Bought her clothes at TJ Maxx, kept a vegetable garden in the backyard because she said store tomatoes tasted like cardboard, and she wasn't going to pay for cardboard. What I did not know, what nobody knew because Ruth Ellison would sooner have walked into traffic than discussed it at a dinner table, was that she had spent 40 years quietly building a commercial property portfolio across northern Nevada. Strip malls, warehouse spaces, a storage facility off I-80, nothing glamorous, everything paid off. She was the kind of woman who clicked coupons for dish soap and owned 7 buildings outright. She raised me in her house on Plumas Street. Small rooms, good light, a backyard that smelled like rosemary and warm concrete in July. She was at every school event, every bad decision I needed talking through, every 2 a.m. phone call I ever made from college when something went sideways. She never made help feel like a transaction. That matters. I want that established before anything else. What I did not find out until 6 weeks after my son was born was that my grandmother had been depositing $4,000 every month into an account in my name since the week I married Trevor. 14 months. $56,000. I had worked a warehouse job until 34 weeks pregnant because we couldn't cover both the car insurance and the electric bill in the same month. I had sold a necklace my grandmother gave me for my 21st birthday because I thought we needed the $300 more than I needed the necklace. The account existed. I had never seen it. I met Trevor Kane at a friend's birthday party in downtown Reno when I was 25. He was the kind of man who fills a room without trying, or what I thought was without trying. Later I understood that was the trying, that the ease was practiced, that the charm had been calibrated over years and many rooms like that one. He worked remotely, he said. Project management for a tech firm out of San Francisco. He was vague about specifics in a way that felt, at the time, like he just didn't want to bore me. My grandmother met him 3 times before the wedding. After the 3rd time, on the drive home, she said, "He's very smooth." I took it as a compliment. I was 26 and in love, and did not yet understand that my grandmother never used the word smooth as a compliment. The warning signs were there. I want to say that honestly, because I've spent a lot of time in the last 8 months asking myself how I missed them, and the answer is uncomfortable. I didn't miss them so much as I chose, over and over, not to look at them directly. Trevor suggested we consolidate our finances when we got back from our honeymoon. Joint account, everything pooled. He'd handle the bill payments because he was more organized, he said, and I was working full days and didn't need the extra administrative load. He made it sound considerate. I accepted it, the way you accept someone holding a door open. The budget started tightening almost immediately. My grocery run started feeling like negotiations. I became the kind of person who checks the per-unit price on everything. Trevor's wardrobe didn't change. Mine got smaller. I started finding reasons: the economy, the cost of living increase, the fact that his contract work had a slow quarter, and I recycled those reasons like they were facts. He was good at making me feel like the problem was my anxiety, not the math. When I got pregnant, the tightening became something else. By my 6th month, I had taken the warehouse job, overnight inventory at a distribution center off McCarran. The work wasn't complicated, but it was physical and cold, and I told myself I was being practical, that this was temporary, that Trevor was lining up a bigger contract and we'd be fine by the time the baby came. He knew about the job. He said he admired me for not sitting around feeling sorry for myself. He said it like it was a compliment. He brought me a coffee thermos one morning when I came home from a shift, kissed me on the forehead, told me I was the hardest working person he knew. $56,000 was sitting in a bank account with his name on it as co-manager. His mother, Sandra, started appearing more frequently once the pregnancy was showing. She lived in Carson City, 45 minutes south, and had a flexible enough schedule to stop by the apartment 2 or 3 times a week without notice. She and Trevor had the kind of closeness that looked warm from outside and felt suffocating to be near. Inside jokes that stopped when I entered a room. Plans that got made and mentioned after the fact. She had opinions about everything. The brand of prenatal vitamins I was taking, the way I'd arranged the nursery, whether I was walking enough, whether I was resting too much. All of it delivered in the tone of someone who considered themselves helpful. Around month 10 of our marriage, packages started arriving. Good ones. A watch, clothing, what looked like hotel gift sets. When I asked, Trevor said he'd done well on a contract bonus. He said it simply, the way you'd say you'd stopped for gas. I had recently spent 40 minutes on the phone with our internet provider negotiating a lower rate because I didn't know how we were going to cover it and our regular rate in the same months. I kept going to work. I kept doing the math on grocery receipts. I kept telling myself it would level out. Our son was born on a Thursday in late October. We named him Cole. He weighed 8 pounds even and arrived looking profoundly unimpressed with the circumstances, which I have since decided is his defining trait. My grandmother drove up from Plummer Street the morning after, which for her was its own form of extravagance. She didn't like driving at night anymore, but she left before sunrise to get there by 7. She held Cole for almost an hour without saying much, which was how I knew she was moved. My grandmother expresses emotion by going quiet. The louder the feeling, the quieter she gets. Then she looked at me. She looked at my sweatshirt, the one I'd had since college, with a fraying cuff I kept meaning to replace. And then at the way I shifted when a billing notification came through on my phone. Turning the screen down fast before she could see it. She noticed. She noticed everything. She always has. She handed Cole carefully back to me and sat down in the chair next to the bed, with the deliberate slowness of a woman who is choosing her words. Cassie, she said. Is the money I've been sending helping at all? I thought I'd misheard her. The hospital was loud in the hallway and I'd barely slept and I said, What money? She looked at me the way I have never been looked at before or since. Like something had just confirmed a fear she hadn't wanted to name out loud. She was quiet for a long moment. I've been putting $4,000 a month into an account in your name since you got married. She said it slowly, like she was translating. It was supposed to be, she paused, a cushion. So you'd always have something, Grandma. My voice came out wrong. I've never had access to any account. She didn't react dramatically. That's not how she's built. But the color shifted in her face and she sat very still for a moment. The way she sits when she's thinking something all the way through to the end. Then she reached into her purse and took out her phone. She doesn't use it easily. She's 71 and still refers to the internet as the computer. But she found what she was looking for, pressed it, and said very quietly into the line, I need you to come to the hospital. Room 214. Yes. Now. 20 minutes later, Trevor walked in with Sandra. They were carrying a gift bag from a children's boutique I recognized as expensive. They were in the middle of a conversation, laughing, and they did not immediately register my grandmother's presence in the room. When they did, the laughter stopped. My grandmother didn't look at Sandra. She looked at Trevor. She's small, my grandmother. 5'2", white-haired, wears reading glasses on a beaded chain. She looks like someone's harmless grandmother. She is someone's grandmother. She is someone's grandmother. She is not harmless. Trevor, she said. Just his name. Quiet and level, the way you'd set something fragile down on a hard surface. He smiled. The smile was doing its best. Hey, Ruth. Didn't know you'd be here already. Where is the money gone? She said. Not a question. A recitation. The smile held for another second and then let go. What money? Don't, she said. Her voice didn't rise. It did the other thing. It dropped. Got very still. the way a room gets still before weather. The joint account. Your name is listed as co-manager on an account I funded every month for 14 months. My granddaughter's never seen a single dollar of it. I looked at Trevor. He was looking at the floor. He did the thing he did when he needed time, touched the back of his neck, exhaled slow. Prepared a version. Things got complicated, he said. There was a period where I had some obligations I needed to manage. I sold the necklace she gave me, I said. I heard my voice come out very flat. The one from my 21st birthday. I sold it because I thought we needed $300 more than I needed it. He looked at me then. I will say this. He looked genuinely pained. That was the worst part. The pain looked real, which meant either it was real and he'd done it anyway, or he was good enough at this that even the remorse was performed. I still don't know which. I'm not sure it matters. Sandra took a step forward. Her chin came up. She said, Trevor has been managing a very complicated financial. Ruth, my grandmother said. Just my grandmother's own name, said to herself quietly, like a reminder. Then, to Sandra, your name appears as an authorized user on a credit card funded by transfers from that account. I have the statements. I'd recommend you stop talking. Sandra went very still. My grandmother looked back at Trevor. Something in her expression had closed in the way a decision closes. Finally, without appeal. You need to go, she said to him. Both of you. Trevor opened his mouth. She looked at him once more, and he closed it. After they left, my grandmother sat back down next to me. Cole was asleep on my chest. The room was very quiet. I want you to call a lawyer, she said. I already have a name. Her name is Patricia Hensley. She's in Reno. She's been doing family and financial law for 30 years, and she's not interested in being charmed. The next morning, Patricia Hensley sat across from me at a table in my grandmother's kitchen and asked me to tell her everything. She was 61, methodical, took notes by hand in a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she put her pen down and opened a folder. What she showed me, 14 months of transfer records, each one arriving in the joint account and then moved, within a day or two, into a private checking account Trevor had opened at a credit union in Sacramento in the second month of our marriage. His name only. She turned the page to the credit card Sandra used, the one funded by my grandmother's money. $4,200 in a single month. A hotel in Lake Tahoe. Clothing. A spa day. Dates that lined up with a weekend in my second trimester when I'd stayed home alone because I said I wasn't feeling well enough to travel. Then she showed me the last item. Trevor had applied for a personal business loan 2 weeks before Cole was born. The application listed his monthly household income at a number that required the joint account balance to make sense. That application had been submitted to a lender that cross-referenced financial records. She said, his income documentation doesn't hold. The lender already flagged it. He submitted bank statements that misrepresent the source of the deposits. That's bank fraud. The application is sitting in a federal review queue as of last Thursday. Patricia filed a civil fraud claim the next morning. She also filed for divorce on my behalf simultaneously. Trevor's business loan was denied within the week. The lender closed the application and referred the case to their compliance team. The referral was routine. The outcome was not. An investigation followed, slower than I wanted, faster than Trevor expected. His consulting work, which I learned during the proceedings, had never been as robust as presented, which is a careful way of saying it had been mostly fabricated, could not survive the scrutiny. Within 3 months of the filing, he had no active clients and no credible way to acquire new ones. Sandra's credit card records came out in discovery. She hired her own attorney, which cost her money she apparently didn't have as freely as she'd implied. I did not follow the details of her situation closely. I had other things to pay attention to. The weeks after filing had a strange quality to them. I was recovering from childbirth. I was learning to be someone's mother. I was dismantling a marriage at the same time. The exhaustion of those 3 things running simultaneously doesn't have a word I know of. Or maybe it does and I just couldn't access it at the time. Trevor's attempts to reach me followed a predictable path. First apologetic, then explanatory, then, when that didn't work, quietly accusatory. You're letting her control you. You're not thinking clearly. This isn't who you are. I read those messages the way you check a weather app for a city you've moved away from, informative but not relevant. Then he did the thing that turned everything. He filed a counter-motion claiming that my grandmother's transfers constituted marital assets and that he was entitled to consideration of them in the property division. He argued that I had been aware of the account and had agreed to allow him to manage it. Patricia's response to that filing was 6 pages. The third page contained a sworn deposition from my grandmother's bank, confirming the account had been designated single-party access at its creation, that Trevor had been added as co-manager through a form submitted without my signature, and that my grandmother had never authorized that addition. The form had been submitted by fax from a UPS store location in Sacramento. The counter-motion was dismissed. The civil fraud judgment came 4 months later. Trevor was ordered to repay the full $56,000 plus interest and legal fees. The federal review on the loan application was still pending at that point and remained on its own timeline, which Patricia described as slow but pointed in one direction. My grandmother's house on Plumas Street smells like it always has. Coffee and rosemary and something underneath that I can only describe as the particular permanence of a house that has been lived in by the same person for 40 years. And absorbed her completely. My old room is still my old room. Same quilt, same curtains, same view of the neighbor's pine tree that drops needles on the roof every fall. I moved back in with Cole when he was 6 weeks old. I sat on the edge of that bed that first night with him asleep on my chest, and felt the specific exhaustion of someone who has been carrying something very heavy for a very long time and has just, finally, been allowed to set it down. Cole is now 8 months old. He has my grandmother's eyes, that particular grey-green that looks different in different light, and has already discovered that if he looks at her long enough and works up a certain expression, she will stop whatever she is doing and give him her full attention. He is correct about this every time without exception, and he knows it. My grandmother and I sat on her back porch a few weeks ago in the early evening after Cole was down. The garden behind the house was doing what it does in late summer. Tomatoes coming in faster than we can use them. The rosemary getting out of hand. The kind of ordinary abundance she's maintained back there for decades. She had a glass of iced tea. I had coffee, which I've gone back to now that I'm not nursing. I should have structured the account differently, she said after a while. Direct deposit to you alone. I didn't want it to feel like surveillance. I wanted it to feel like trust. Grandma. Let me finish, she said. She was looking at the tomatoes. I told myself it was a wedding gift to both of you, that managing it jointly was the reasonable thing. She paused. I think I told myself that so I didn't have to look too closely at whether I trusted him. You liked him. She made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. I liked that you liked him. That's different. She looked at me. I used your happiness as a reason not to use my own judgment. I knew something was smooth about him. I let it go. She doesn't apologize easily. When she does, it lands. I'm sorry, she said. For the warehouse job. For the necklace. For every moment you thought you were failing at something that was never your failure to begin with. My throat tightened the way it does when something true finds the exact right words. I didn't know, I said. I know you didn't. That's the thing about that kind of person. They look for exactly that. They look for someone who trusts without auditing. And they treat that trust like a resource they can draw down indefinitely. She set her glass down. He was counting on both of us not looking. And we didn't. We sat with that for a while. The garden did its quiet things around us. I don't think about Trevor every day anymore. Some weeks I don't think about him at all, which is its own form of progress. The last communication I received from him was a text 3 months ago that said he had made serious mistakes but that he hoped for Cole's sake we could find a way to move forward with mutual respect. It was written carefully, with the effort visible underneath it. I saved it in a folder on my phone, not for me, for Cole, so that when he is old enough to ask questions about his father, he can read the words his father chose when he needed something and draw his own conclusions. The woman who worked warehouse shifts in the dark at 34 weeks pregnant and felt good about her resourcefulness. She was not naive. She was not foolish. She trusted someone who had specifically studied what her trust looked like and decided to use it. That is not the same thing as being easy to fool. That's something that was done to her, carefully and over time, by someone who understood what he was doing. It took me a while to hold that distinction steady. I hold it now. There's a word for what I felt the morning Patricia called to tell me the judgment had come in. Not triumph. Not exactly relief. Something lighter than either. The particular lightness of a person who has been treated like a resource and has finally fully stopped being one. My grandmother used to say, the most expensive thing you can own is someone else's secret. She said it about something else entirely, years ago, something I can't even remember now. But I've thought about it a lot these past 8 months. The account is in my name alone now. Has been since the day I moved back in. $4,000 a month as it always should have been. I've started putting half of it toward a down payment. A house, eventually, 3 or 4 years from now. Something with a yard for coal. My grandmother offered to help with the rest. I told her I'd let her know when I was ready. That felt like the right answer. For both of us. I've thought a lot about what Trevor actually took from me. The $56,000 is the number on the legal documents, and it's real and it mattered. But the thing that cost me more than that, the thing that doesn't show up in any filing, was the version of myself I was running on during those 14 months. The woman who felt guilty buying name-brand cereal, who rehearsed what she'd say to the electric company if the payment didn't clear, who sold a piece of jewelry she loved and felt proud of herself for being practical about it. That version of me was operating on a story Trevor had built carefully, one small correction at a time, until I couldn't see the shape of it anymore. That's the part that took me the longest to understand. It wasn't that I was foolish. It wasn't that I missed obvious signs. It was that the signs had been specifically designed to look like something else, like a budget problem, like a slow market, like my own anxiety. Trevor was not careless. He was deliberate. And there's a difference between being deceived by accident and being deceived by someone who studied what your trust looked like and then used it as an entry point. One of those is a misfortune. The other is a choice someone made about you. What I keep coming back to is cause and effect, not in any mystical sense, but in the plainest one. Trevor made a series of choices, each one building on the last, each one requiring the next to sustain itself. The private account in Sacramento required hiding the transfers. Hiding the transfers required keeping me away from the finances. Keeping me away from the finances required making me feel like my questions were burdens. Every piece of it was load-bearing, and when my grandmother sat in that hospital room and said $4,000 a month, and I said I never saw it, the whole structure had nowhere left to go. It came down not because someone heroically exposed it, but because it had always been built on borrowed time. That kind of thing always is. My grandmother made her own choice in that room. She could have stayed quiet while she processed it, could have gone home and made calls and handled it at a distance the way careful people sometimes do. Instead, she sat there, held coal, and asked me directly. That directness? That willingness to say the uncomfortable thing out loud in real time is something I've been trying to learn from her ever since. It requires a kind of confidence I'm still building, the confidence to trust your own read of a situation even when someone is working hard to give you a different one. Cole is 8 months old. He doesn't know any of this yet. Someday he will, in whatever version of it is appropriate for wherever he is in his life at the time. What I hope he takes from it isn't bitterness about his father. It's something more useful than that. I hope he learns early that integrity isn't a personality trait you're born with. It's a practice, a set of choices you make or don't make in small moments when you think no one is watching. Trevor made his choices in those moments. Patricia's folder documented every one of them, and I made mine too, finally. The morning I called Patricia. The morning I moved back into Plumas Street. The morning I opened an account in my name only and put the first deposit in myself. Those were small choices. They didn't feel dramatic at the time. They were just the next right thing, done quietly, one after another. That's how you rebuild something. That's all it ever is.